There's a couple of mule deer. That one's coming right over here. And they're so pretty. That's a young one. There's a little bit older one over there behind the tree, and one over here. This little guy's coming right up here. He's saying hello. You know what? He knew as soon as I turned on this video that it was for Adeline. He's like, oh, there's another little, oh, I said the name Adeline. Here they come. Those little deer. Just like the white-tailed deer. These are mule deer. They want to say hello to Adeline. She's like, hello, Adeline. They popped right out here. They said, oh, everything's good. It's just an Adeline video. No danger there. Oh, well, it's a beautiful March day in Colorado, and I'm just out getting a walk on this round mountain. I think I've got a few videos from this place now. And I've been dealing with a knee problem for a while, and it's called runner's knee. At first I didn't know what was going on because it was extremely painful, and it's worse on my right leg. And that's because the way I sit when I drive. I'm tall, and most cars are not made for tall people, so it's made my right leg worse. But it was in both legs. And there's a good point here, and that is doing things from the time you're young and staying in a habit. So my legs are getting a lot better because I've been exercising them and going to the gym. But stretching, for years I've ignored stretching, and I was never super flexible. But when I was younger and I played sports, I made myself stretch, and I was reasonably flexible. And then, because stretching is not my strong suit, I quit really doing much stretching, and now I'm paying the price for that because I'm trying to start to stretch again, which has a lot to do with some of these pains I'm having in my legs, in my hip, my calf, my Achilles. I plantar about a year and a half ago. I have plantar fasciitis, and it's all from flexibility. And every time I'll start stretching, one of those key points, my problem will go away. So I know it's flexibility, it's strength and flexibility. My point is once you develop good habits, start doing them habits when you're young, eating well, exercising, stretching, mindfulness, all of these other things, prayer, and many other good things. You know what are good things. Don't stop. Once you develop a habit, don't let yourself stop that good habit. It's a blessing to develop good habits, but you can lose those habits, and it takes a little while to get back into those habits. And you'll avoid a lot of pain and suffering if you develop good habits and then stick with them. Hey, how are you all? And so exercise and eating well, but also your practices of your skills and your talents. When you look at great artists and musicians and writers and all kinds of people, they might take occasional breaks because breaks are somewhat needed, but mostly they always are doing something related to their skill. Sometimes they'll diverge from their main, what makes them a career, what makes them money. They'll go off into a different direction just to give their mind something new to do, but they're still practicing what they're doing. So it's very common with people with skills, and even people who are like craftsmen and that kind of thing. They'll have their craft, for example, well, let's say some kind of woodworking or something, boat building or something like that. And they'll, that's what they're really good at. But a lot of times they'll also have little hobbies that are somewhat related to their main craft, but it's their own little thing that they do. And so it's kind of like taking a break without taking a break. But it's staying in practice. It's always amazed me how these like really great musicians, super successful musicians, they just keep doing their thing, even when it's not making them money directly, just because that's what they do. And because of that, their skill doesn't die. And so it's all kinds of things, but it's a real blessing to yourself to develop these good habits and then to keep them and don't take them for granted. And then it also kind of teaches you how to get rid of bad habits too. So if you create, hey, how are you? If you create good habits and you observe that process for creating good habits, it also forms us and teaches us a bit about what is a habit, not good or bad, and we can kind of learn the process for identifying and maybe working our way out of bad habits, which is a very important skill too. And it is a skill. There's a lot of science behind what forms habits. You can read about that. So it's got a lot to do with the reward system in the brain, but there are processes for getting out of bad habits, which is a skill in and of itself. So, you can do that too, and try to learn to do that. Learn how to both develop good skills. A lot of people say that bad habits never die, but they're replaced. And so, in other words, as far as your primitive brain goes, there's an idea that it has to be doing something to get that reward. And so instead of thinking about the fact that you get rid of a bad habit, it's just that your brain doesn't know, as long as it's getting a reward, to just replace the bad habit with a good habit. I think that's a pretty legitimate theory, actually. It makes a lot of sense, and it might be a very powerful way to think about things in life. So, and you can be creative with that. Like, you might say, well, if you eat some kind of bad junk food that you really like and you find some other healthier option, that would be like a direct replacement. So you just start, every time you have a craving for the bad thing, you just replace it with the good thing that you also like. But then there's also more divergent replacement too. So instead of just thinking about maybe you have this bad thing that you do, this bad food that you eat or something, and instead of replacing it with another thing to eat, you replace it with another activity, so something you enjoy, like, I don't know, some sort of exercise or sport or some sort of paint, craft or painting, whatever, That also teaches us a lot about how to be in moderation. So there's a lot of things that they're bad for us, mostly because we overdo it. So there's a lot of things that you can do in moderation that might actually even be good for you in moderation. It's kind of a tricky thing, but when you do too much of it, it's bad for you. This can include, believe it or not, exercise. Not as much so when you're young, but as you get older, there's a lot of research that shows that you need the right amount of exercise. Moderation, it's a pretty good amount, but people who push themselves way beyond limits can do stress to the body that's not necessarily good. And so when we think about habits and all this thing about habits and practices, we can also think about how if you moderate these different habits to the right amount, it allows you to have more diversity in your life. So instead of, if you have your main thing that you're focused on, like I said, like a professional musician, well, it makes sense that professional musician should spend a very large amount of their time doing that thing, because it actually provides for them also a living. And so for them, what's right for them is different from what is right for another person, and the amount of time that they spend playing music. However, if you think about this replacement idea of habits, it allows you to have a much more diverse and moderation in your life. So instead of being stuck on one thing that makes it a bad habit, you have moderation in many little things in addition to whatever your main thing is, and now everything is in a healthy balance. So, but this is an really important part of life. We talk about doing well in school and all these things being so important, but when it really comes to how well you live and how healthy your mind and your body and your spirit are, these aren't, they can be related to the things that we learn, the academic things that we learn, obviously, but that's really what makes you, enjoy life, is the things that are pertinent to your body and mind and spirit, and your social life, and the right kinds of people that you're involved with, and those sorts of things. So those kind of skills, they are skills, you do learn, and you do need to teach yourself and be responsible for the little bit of direction that we are able to give our lives, outside of all the things externally that are affecting our lives, make all the difference. That's why out of all the billions and billions of people who have ever lived, every life is different, because there's so many external factors, in fact, impacting each individual life, that no life will be the same. But we all have this little bit of our lives where we make decisions. And you can get into a philosophy about free will and all those sorts of things. It's sort of a moot point, because what else can you do? Just throw up your hands and say, I have no ability to control things, Don't do that. If you want to philosophize and think about deterministic approach, philosophies of life versus free will and all these other things, that's fine. It's not that's not useful, but as far as I can tell, every day you have to, make some decisions, and and it's amazing how much just one great decision does so much it's crazy how much one decision it's good to make lots of good decisions, but it's oftentimes just taking advantage of one opportunity, making one good decision, which can mean, right? So a good decision can be both, it can be multiple, it can be proactive, it can be reactive, it can be a decision to not do something. So it's not just making one. Sometimes you got to be thinking about that too. Is you make a good decision to grab an opportunity, you make a good decision to take initiative, but you also make good decisions in avoiding things too. So it's it's not necessarily a bad idea to default firstly to put something aside if everything's going a good path, and to not do something, take a decision to do something while you look at the other options. Just make sure you put everything into some sort of categorization. It's not too many decisions. This is a lot of research on this if you want backing of this, but life would also just teach you that there's decisions that need to take longer to think about and to look at and analyze, but most of the time you should have a process in place so that you're not taking extremely long periods of time to make most decisions. And you have to kind of say, is this type of decision that should take a long time to make, or is this the kind of decision that should be made pretty quickly? Because there's a lot of, both in moving forward in life, but also related to happiness. They've shown that for most basic decisions, once people, you want to weed out the really worst things, but once you have several options that are relatively good, people are usually happier just taking one of those good decisions and moving forward, even if later in the future it would show that, oh, this other decision would have been a little more, profitable or a little more rewarding. But it's just the happiness factor comes from the fact we're just living a life and we can't predict everything about the future. And so we just want to move forward in good directions. So, if you have 5 reasonably good options, and you can eliminate 5 bad ones, then, taking too much time to just wring your hands and around making between the 5 is not particularly useful. But if it's a really super big decision, then, you might need to take a little time, do more research, and sometimes it might actually take there's a few decisions in life that might even take years, but that's very few things. And you need to know which ones should take years, which ones should take months, which ones should take weeks, hours, minutes, and seconds. I love you. Enjoy every day.